Hope you all have received the material. Hope you all have the material too. SA-230. Okay, perfect. So let's begin with SA-230. Right, pay attention to what SA-230 is. Let's understand the core concept of 230 and then we understand it line by line. Right, now please understand. I'll tell you the importance of SA-230. SA-230 is audit documentation. Audit documentation is the most important audit evidence. Audit documentation is the most important audit evidence. Right? Audit documentation means whatever audit you are conducting, you will first of all have the terms of audit engagement. So terms of audit engagement are your important document, should be documented. Second important point, you will prepare an audit plan. You need to plan the audit. Only if you prepare an audit plan, you will be able to function properly. Then you have an audit plan, that is also your important audit documentation. Of course, I will explain to you later on what is an audit plan. Then you have something known as an audit program. You will prepare your audit program. That is your a very important audit evidence. After that, you have something known as audit evidence that you will obtain. So you may obtain some document, you may obtain some audit evidence. This audit evidence is also a very important part of your audit documentation. Amongst these, your audit documentation may also have any agreement that you have taken. The audit documentation may have something which is very important, something we call as communication with management. So whatever communication you are doing with the management, that also you will record in the audit documentation. You have representation letter. I will explain to you, of course, what is a representation letter. This representation letter also is a part of your audit documentation. Are you understanding? Now please understand the importance importance of audit documentation. First, understand, if you have a recurring audit, मतलब यही audit अगले साल भी कर रहे हैं, then this documentation is useful as it will act as a reference. आप इस audit documentation को देख सकते हो और ये देख सकते हो कि इसमें क्या क्या important है और जो भी इसमें important है आप you can continue following for the next audit report also. So which means that audit documentation is important as a reference in case of recurring audit. अगर ऑडिट दोबारा करना है तो हम पिछले साल का ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन चेक कर सकते हैं, हमको पता चलेगा कौन सा एरिया इंपॉर्टेंट है, कौन सा एरिया इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है. जो भी एरिया इंपॉर्टेंट है उस पर हम अकॉर्डिंगली ध्यान दे पाएंगे. ये कब हो पाएगा? जब एक प्रॉपर ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन होगा. Are you understanding? That is the first major usefulness or the first major importance of a proper audit documentation. Right, come to the second point. Understand this carefully. It will act as an evidence for you. What is the meaning of act as an evidence? If someone questions you that you have not done the audit properly, if someone tells you कि आपने ढंग से audit नहीं किया है, आपने तरीके से audit नहीं किया है, तो तब आप उसको कैसे प्रूव करोगे कि नहीं हमने ढंग से audit किया है, हमने सारे ऐसे फॉलो किए हैं. So we have followed all the standards on auditing, we have followed the ethical requirements. You cannot show him by doing the audit again. How can you prove that you have conducted the audit in the most professional and in the most correct manner? You can do that only with the help of audit documentation. So with the help of audit documentation, you can prove, if someone questions you that you have not conducted the audit properly, to them you can prove it that you have done the audit correctly, you have followed all the standards on auditing, you have followed all the ethical requirements, you have done whatever best you could do in conducting the audit, right? Only then they will prove to you. Right now, when I remember once I was called to give a speech somewhere, where I had to speak on how can the auditor detect frauds. So we used to do a lot of fraud detection during the times we used to study, and we have learned to do a lot of fraud detection. So when we were actively doing fraud detection, in that case, in during those times, some institute had invited me, and there was a huge crowd of 400-500 students, and we I had to address to them how to have a fraud detection. And there I explained one example which I am giving to you also. Remember this example for your life. This is a fact in terms of audit. Say for example, if you are driving a car, right, all of you are driving a car, and a policeman stops you. You are driving a car, and a policeman stops you. He tells you, please show me your license. You say that, sir, I do not have a license, but see, I drive safely, I follow rules, and I am a good driver. Right? Please understand this carefully. You are driving a car, a policeman stops you, asks you for your license. You tell the policeman, sir, मेरे पास लाइसेंस तो नहीं है, लेकिन मैं कसम खा के बोलता हूँ कि मैं बहुत अच्छा ड्राइव करता हूँ, मैं सेफ ड्राइव करता हूँ, मैं 40 के ऊपर कभी अपनी कार चलाता नहीं हूँ, और मैंने आज तक सारे रूल्स फॉलो किए हैं, और मैं बहुत ही अच्छा ड्राइवर हूँ. आप मेरे पे विश्वास करो, मेरे पास लाइसेंस नहीं है, लेकिन ये सब कुछ मैं करता हूँ. I want to know from you, right? I want to know from you whether the policeman will stop you, will leave you, or he will not leave you. My question to you is, will he allow you to go away, or he will not allow you to go away? Right? You can post it on the chat box. Reply to me on the chat box. Will he allow you? Of course, he will not allow you. Right? What you're saying is correct. Of course, he will not allow you. Right? Come to the next one. Let's take another example. Okay. What you're saying is correct. Now let's take another example. Again, you are driving a car. You are one of the rash drivers that anyone has ever seen. You always disobey the rules. You do not drive carefully, and you are not a good driver. And the policeman stops you. Now the policeman does not know that you are a bad driver, but just the policeman stops you and asks you for a license. You have the license. You have the license. Tell me, will he let you go? Please understand, at that point you have not violated any rules, but he tells you कि यार आपके पास लाइसेंस है, बिल्कुल लाइसेंस है. Will he let you go? Will he let you go? Will he allow you? I'm again asking you, will he let you go, or will he allow you? Yes, of course, he will allow you. right? Now, if you understand the exact example that I've given you, you understand the importance of that document, the document known as license. Are you understanding? Are you able to understand the importance of that document that you call as license? That document is so important that no one is actually coming to see whether what kind of driver you are. If you are having a license, if you hold a license, which means it is presumed that you are a valid driver. Similarly, in audit, if you are having proper audit documentation, people will believe, the authorities will believe that you have done a sufficient audit that was required to be done in the given circumstances. Are you understanding? That is the importance that audit documentation has. That is the power that audit documentation has. And that is why it is said that audit documentation is the most important aspect of the audit. We will study further that there is one time limit given, that within this time limit you will have to conduct the entire audit, and you will have to finish preparing your audit documentation file, right? So these are some important aspects that you will be studying over here, right? This is the basics of your audit documentation, which is one of the most important audit evidence that you have, right? With this base, let's go to SA-230. There are a couple of parts which are important in your study material, so that also I will share with you tomorrow. So we will study this particular standard from the study material I have issued to you, plus one or two aspects are nicely presented in the institute study material, so we will discuss it from there as well, right? Okay, come to SA-230, which is audit documentation, right? Let's try and understand the standard. SA-230 audit documentation. What is audit documentation, or why do we need documentation? According to SA-230, audit documentation refers to, very important underline, it refers to record of. So underline the word, it refers to record of. It audit documentation is nothing but a record of what audit procedures you have performed. तो जो भी audit procedure आपने perform किए उसको आप properly document करते हो, वो record को हम क्या कहते हैं? Audit documentation कहते हैं. Second, it is a record of what relevant audit evidences you have obtained. So whatever relevant audit evidences you have obtained, that you will have to present over here in audit documentation. And third, what conclusions has the auditor reached? So if the auditor says that this is a qualified opinion, is my audit opinion, then you can always check what is the base on which he has conducted this opinion. The base will of course be audit evidence, which will be mentioned in the audit documentation. So you can always check that with the help of proper and adequate audit documentation. Terms such as working papers, work papers are also sometimes used for the same. So audit documentation is also sometimes known as working papers, also sometimes known as work papers. Whenever auditor is in the process of obtaining of sufficient and appropriate audit evidences, he prepares some working papers like audit plan, audit program, significant observations, queries, and on the other hand, he obtains a schedule, list, and confirmations from the management. Very important underline, और ये मैंने आपको already यहाँ पे पढ़ा दिया. देखो, what are the things that will form part of audit evidence? Here we have already seen those things. Same things have been explained over there. It says process of collecting and preparing working papers is known as documentation. Very important part. The process of collecting these working papers and the process of preparing the working papers is known as your documentation. Mark this first question, very important. It has been asked in the exam a couple of times. So mark this as a very important question. It says, what is your audit documentation and why do we need documentation? Let's quickly revise this first question and then we go to two interesting concepts in audit documentation. It says, according to SA-230, audit documentation means a record of what audit procedures you have performed. Audit procedure perform करके second stage पे क्या मिलता है? Audit evidence. ऑडिट एविडेंस के बेसिस पे आप क्या देते हो, कंक्लूजन. सो विच मीन्स audit documentation keeps a record of three things which are in process. The first thing is that you perform audit procedures. Based on that, you collect audit evidence. And the third part, you provide your conclusions based on the audit evidences obtained. Sometimes these are also known as working papers or work papers. Right, in the audit process, the auditor obtains sufficient appropriate audit evidence. He will plan the audit, he will post his queries, he will get his observations, he will prepare the schedule list, he will obtain confirmations from the management. The process of collecting all these important documents, the process of preparing your working papers is known as your audit documentation. Right, I hope you're absolutely clear with this. Again, audit documentation is nothing but a record of three things. First, what audit procedures you have performed. Second, what are the relevant audit evidences that you have obtained. And third, what conclusions have you reached on based on the audit evidences that you have obtained. This entire phenomenon is known as audit documentation. The process of collecting all the working papers and the process of preparing all the working papers is known as audit documentation. Are you understanding it? Fine, let's go ahead. Now let's not go to question number 2. I want to discuss a couple of important points, and then I think we are done for today. Right, look at the point over here. The point that I'm trying to highlight over here is communication with the management. Right, let's try and understand communication with the management. Then let's try and understand the representation letter. After that, we take your doubts, and then we are done for the day. Communication with management means, suppose if you find out any query, if you find out a mistake. So I'm writing over here. If you find out a mistake in financial statements, you will go to the management and communicate with the management. The management may agree or disagree. Whatever they do, you take it in writing. Once you take it in writing, this becomes your audit documentation. Are you understanding? You go to the management, you communicate with them, you ask them, or sometimes the best thing is you send your queries to them in an email. So they will reply back also by the mode of email. Now this email you can print and keep it as audit documentation. Now if you understand, the email that you have records the date, records the sender, and records the time. So you have sufficient and appropriate audit evidence regarding who sent you what reply at what time and at what date. Are you understanding? So this entire communication, we call it as correspondence. This entire thing, we call it as correspondence. The entire correspondence, you can take it and file it in your audit documentation file. Are you understanding? This is the meaning of communication with management. So many times management will tell you something when you go to them for a query. When you speak to their seniors, their statements will change. Now this audit evidence will help you support what you are saying, right? So that you are not unnecessarily proven wrong in front of the management, which also means that so many times audit documentation will safeguard the auditor. Right, if the management constantly keeps changing their statements, so in that case you can take it in writing, so that tomorrow when you give some statement to someone, you are not proved wrong. Why? Because you have a proper audit documentation. Are you understanding? This is the explanation to point number 6. Let's come to point number 7. Point number 7 speaks about representation letter. Let's understand what is the meaning of a representation letter. So after this standard, we are going to do SA-580, which will explain to you the meaning of the term representation letter. This representation letter, the auditor takes from the management. The auditor takes this representation letter from the management. कौन obtain करता है? Auditor. कौन देता है? Management. ध्यान देना. इसमें क्या होता है? ऑडिटर लिखवा के ले लेता है मैनेजमेंट से. that you have provided all the books have been prepared properly. And you remember accounting standard 13, where a lot depended on the intention of the management. So wherever things are depending on the intention of the management, whether you're classifying it as current and long term, that intention can change anytime. So it is important that we get that intention written in the form of a representation letter. So that also we will record in the audit representation letter. Once you record it in the audit representation letter, then if someone questions you or questions your integrity, you can always prove it showing the audit documentation that you have. Are you understanding? Of course, we'll study this in detail when we do SA-580. As of now, since there were two new important terms, I wanted to explain you these two terms. Right? So we are done with question number 1, which is the basics of audit documentation. Right. So let us. I think this much is sufficient for today. Let's take your doubts if any. So please post your doubts, and also let me know, have you clearly understood SA-230 till now? Whatever I've explained to you, have you clearly understood SA-230? Have you clearly understood SA-230? Please let me know that so that we can proceed. Have you clearly understood SA-230? Okay, great. So please revise the entire SA-510 and 230, whatever we have done. I will take your doubts tomorrow as we begin, and we then continue with SA-230. Right? Okay, since there are no doubts, thank you so much for attending. Please revise the entire audit that we have done. Also revise all the accounting standards. Tomorrow we will finish AS18. I will see you tomorrow at 8 a.m. Right, thank you so much and see you. Bye.